we as manufacturers really do make it too hard to get to the engineering performance data of our products. And recently we've, as an industry, connected with AHRI as our industry association, and we're getting more of this necessary data to be available through these very available common sources. But there's room for improvement. There may be a day when right sizing a heat pump is a lot easier to do. Obviously, technologies like Amply break down the barriers to doing that load calculation in the first place. We need to get our performance data to be embedded in tools. And I think that the way we're connecting our corporate data through AHRI, I see a path forward for us now to then make the performance data for a certified indoor and outdoor pair, a combination, then available for your APIs to access. I am also hopeful that this connected commissioning type of digital product will be able to confirm after the fact that this heat pump is within a right sizing. It might take a season of operation for us to build the performance curve against the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. To see,
but I think we're going to get there.
Hey, everyone. We have an episode unlike any we've ever done before. We have Lindsey Dorman, Kevin DeMaster, and Jonathan Moscatello from Carrier, LG, and Daikin. Each of them runs the regulatory affairs and sort of utility relationships with those three big manufacturers. It's unlike anything we've done before because we've never had three guests before, and we've never had this much representation from manufacturers or from this sort of government utility angle. To be perfectly honest, I was a little nervous about this episode. I just wasn't sure how it was going to turn out and felt like we might get, canned corporate speak. But I just finished rewatching it myself, and it's the opposite. These three are open, they're candid, they're fun and funny. The main topic we cover is how to increase the speed of adoption of heat pumps in the US and all the stuff that they see in the way from the utility, government, manufacturer, sort of distributor angle. It's a great episode. We get pretty deep. We get pretty wonky, as you probably heard from the opening clip. But if you're into heat pumps and you interact with utility rebate programs in your area, I think this is going to be a super insightful episode for you. So that's the episode. Before we get there, quick update. We announced this last week, but we have our first sponsor. We have avoided and turned down sponsors till now because we didn't want any confusion about why we were saying what we're saying. We just wanted you to think it was coming from our heart, which is why when BPA approached us, we immediately were like, yes, let's talk about sponsorship, because we feel like our heart is where BPA's heart is. They're awesome. We've been to a bunch of their conferences. They see the world the same way we do when it comes to better homes, better heat pumps. And so they're sponsoring the podcast, which is awesome. And we are doing an event together on Thursday, February 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us for our live training co-sponsored with BPA. We're giving our training, Stop Competing on Price, Win on Trust. It covers our heat pump business model matrix, where you will get a clear diagnostic for how to look at your business and how to do the things that you need to do to get to a spot where you are not competing on price, where you are winning on trust, where you are consistently differentiated from the competition, and building a long-term sustainable business that you enjoy running. It's a great training. We've given it a few times. It's gotten great feedback. We hope to see you on February 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern. The link to register is in the show notes. Okay, with that, on to the show. Hi, and welcome to the Heat Pump Podcast. I'm Ed Smith.
And I'm Eric Fitz. We are co-founders of Amply Energy.
All right, today we have a great episode. We have never had three guests before, so this is super exciting. We have Lindsey Dorman, Jonathan Moscatello, and Kevin DeMaster here from Carrier, Daikin, and LG, in that order. So here's a bit of context on this episode. States across the country are counting on millions of heat pumps to hit their electrification goals. But between ambitious targets and actual installations, there's a whole universe of manufacturers, contractors, distributors, utilities, homeowners who have to make that happen. So with these three guests here, they have a unique perspective on kind of that whole ecosystem, and in particular, the government and utility angle. So we're going to talk about growth, what's constraining growth, why heat pumps, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Lindsey, Jonathan, Kevin, welcome.
Glad
you.
to be here, Ed. Thanks for having us. And Eric, you too. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, excited.
So, guys, you've got important roles, these three manufacturers, and our audience is typically contractors. I'm going to guess that your average contractor doesn't get to spend as much time with you guys as some of the other folks at your companies. Would one of you just explain what the heck y'all do?
Well, I can speak for myself. My name's Lindsey Dorman. I work with Carrier on the utility and energy team. And what I do is I work closely with utilities, implementers, local governments to push some of that energy efficient equipment that we produce. And I think that Jonathan and Kevin kind of have a very similar role to that. So we're really sort of in the back end support, trying to help figure out some of the funding for homeowners, for distributors, for contractors to receive rebates to use more efficient equipment.
I'm going to jump on, this is Kevin DeMaster from LG. I want to just jump on what Lindsey said. So yes, we do all those things, but I think Lindsey is selling herself short. The things, and I want this to be heard by the contractors, because we understand that sometimes these programs are not always the best for you as a contractor. And one of the things that we also try to do is give feedback to these programs on the design of them and what works and what doesn't work for the contractors and what barriers we know. And so I think we all take our collective insight and try to feed that back and say, you got to fix this, or you got to make this easier to work for the contractor. Otherwise, you're not going to get participation. So for you contractors out there, we are fighting for you. We're trying to advocate for the best efficiency metrics that represent the products that us three manufacturers are really trying to drive on what the future of heat pumps look like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the cool things about the three of us is that we're professional friends. We work together as much as we can. And in some settings, like meetings with lots of utilities or government programs, we can confer and speak as much as we can to one voice, because we're not out competing on the day-to-day in sales work in our particular areas. I work for our regulatory affairs and advocacy team for our factory. I don't have any sales responsibility. And despite the fact that my wife and I own a contracting business, I'm close to heat pumps in that way. I don't get involved in the sales work with contractors at all at my company. And so I'm full-time out there trying to raise the usefulness of incentive programs for our sales teams. But some of the work that I'm doing is not going to bear fruit for 2 years, 3 years in some cases. And then also I'm working with educating our product teams to make the next heat pumps that the world or the country is going to need. And I think we all do that to some extent too, if I'm not mistaken, guys. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're spot on.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Jonathan, I do work closely with you and Kevin, but I know that you specifically do have more impact on the contractor maybe than you realize. Putting together the Northwest Heat Pump Symposium, that is going to really affect contractors in the Pacific Northwest specifically. We're working on really important topics on heat pumps, specifically cold climate heat pumps, and the issue with auxiliary heat and sizing that properly, and homeowner education. So those are all things that really do affect a contractor's day-to-day business. So
That's great. It was cool in preparing for this to learn how much you all are friends and coordinate in a completely non-collusion-y way to do what needs to be done to kind of advocate for heat pumps and for contractors in the space. Like that. So I liked that in the lead up.
I want to jump in on that, Ed, because I think we collectively together will accomplish more than if we try to do it individually, because we're trying to help educate and move the market. And when only one voice of one manufacturer is heard, it's it's a sales pitch. But if multiple manufacturers are coming together and talking and educating, that voice becomes, oh, that's not just one manufacturer saying something. This is a collective representation of the technology we're talking about. And a lot of it today, I'm assuming, is really focused around these variable speed heat pumps and inverter compressor as being the future of heat pump technology.
For sure. Well, and I want to say too, like between Kevin at LG and Jonathan at Daikin, it's really kind of them being very only inverter driven to allow someone like me at Carrier, who's more of that traditional, we still absolutely support the gas furnace, but we all play really well together. And I think that it's, at the end of the day, a really great friendship, but also great for all of our businesses to really, unite and have a united front as a industry.
So I'm going to build on something Lindsey just said. Don't think we're not also in your camp, right? Like Jonathan and Daikin have dual fuel systems. We have dual fuel heat pumps. Just, in LG's world, it will only ever have an inverter compressor with the outdoor unit. I mean, that would be but we're both going to be still dealing with that strategy. And that is what I believe a bridge technology for what the future is going to help move the market.
Good point. Good point.
All right. This is a great way to transition into one of our first sort of meaty questions. I love that you're already touching on all of these different elements about the marketplace. You need different kind of products and solutions depending on where you are in the country, what's going on with a specific house. Let's talk about how we kind of get into this whole ecosystem and how we get heat pumps to succeed really across the country. So we obviously need good contractors. We need homeowners that are interested in these products and demanding them from the marketplace. We need great distribution channels. We need, in some cases, rebates are very important to kind of get the market moving. And then absolutely, we need amazing products out there that can solve all these different challenges. Where is this ecosystem? Where is it most strong? Like, where is it really working well? And where is it most fragile now across the country? Or from your perspective?
I think the strength of the market for inverter modern heat pumps is in the West Coast and the Northeast. And I might even go so far as to say the Northeast and the Northwest. These are the states that I think from a utility programs were the first to identify the usefulness of the technology. And then since then, of course, decarbonization, electrification has kind of elevated that. California has gone from being a market that didn't really use heat pumps to now being one of the largest consumers, or on track to be. So yeah, that's my first thought. What about you guys? What do you think?
I'd second that. I think regionally, the Northwest and the Northeast are strongest, but there is a lot of adoption that I'm seeing in other regions, kind of the Colorado, California is a great one too. And it is spreading. It's one of the fastest growing technologies in the US. I think that we still have some issues with training and getting everyone up to speed on how wonderful heat pumps are today. You'd be so surprised at how many contractors I've run into saying, we've installed heat pumps before, they don't keep up. And I would like to challenge that. When was the last time you installed a heat pump? And a lot of times it's one of these, we did it, in 1990. And those aren't the same heat pumps. The heat pumps of today are much different, but we're also learning that you don't need as much backup heat with those electric strip heat. It's becoming a real issue. So I think training is kind of a pitfall for us right now, and making sure that contractors and homeowners feel comfortable with the technology, but also have the confidence to know that it will keep up in cold climates and not leave their customers feeling chilly.
Yeah. So Lindsey, you think is the contracting component of this ecosystem, is that sort of the most challenging or fragile part across distribution, utility partnerships? Like, it's the contractors, is that what you're saying? That's the challenge?
I don't want to put it all on contractors. I have a strong background having been a contractor, and I feel like as a contractor, we always were the ones ending up with the bulk of the responsibility. I think as manufacturers, we have to take that on as well to make sure that our contractors feel comfortable. We have to get out there and really educate homeowners so that they understand what this technology is, so that they can ask for it specifically.
And we haven't, in all fairness to industry as a whole, You think of it, our role in manufacturing as we only get so much time of a contractor or even a distributor if there's not as much bandwidth. And over the last 5 years, we've absolutely had to change product lines to conform with federal regulations twice. And we've had to spend an enormous amount of the limited bandwidth that we have with our customers talking about those things. And then we had the federal government totally supportive of electrification with the Inflation Reduction Act, and now retreating from that. And so the basic block and tackle work of educating contractors are, what are today's modern heat pumps? How do you design and install them properly? Or what are we seeing out in the world to do that properly? What kind of control options do you have, et cetera, all the block and tackle basic work. No doubt we haven't had a lot of chances to do that in a big way with all of the other things that they've.
Eric, you mentioned something, and I think to build upon what both Lindsey and Jonathan said, those markets of the country that are more farther ahead down this heat pump adoption curve are ones where policies have been stronger, right? And so that's very prevalent in the Pacific Northwest. Now California and the Northeast has been that way for a while. I think what you're going to see is that there's other pockets that are starting to emerge, right, with stronger policies, and that's going to be states like Minnesota in particular. And I think you're going to start to see a big surgence in the Southeast. And the reason for the Southeast is because their grids are realizing they are heading for a major storm. And I'm not talking, and the storm being shortage of power during these colder events, and they're happening more frequently or they're more severe. And so those grid with the non-modern heat pump technology that's in existing, most of them are just going to electric resistance at the coincident peak that the utility is saying, I'm at my tipping point. Like, I could be pushing on brownouts here very shortly. That's what's in front of people. So it may not even be a policy shift in those states, but the utilities may just say, we have to do something now ASAP to tackle this problem.
Yeah, you are hitting the nail right on the head. And one of the things I learned like 3 or 4 years ago when I started in my role at Daikin is that our industry for states like North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, about 70%, give or take, of the outdoor units that our industry ships to those states are heat pumps. They're just the legacy older heat pumps. And so we have a lot of work to do, I think, in our roles, actually, to help regulators, policymakers, and so forth see that this impending crisis around having resource adequacy, enough electricity. The way to solve that is to get as many inverter modern heat pumps installed to replace the existing ones. And then as much as we can, don't install any of the legacy heat pumps going forward. And if we can do that, like places like the Southeast, which have huge heat pump penetrations, will quickly become these sort of standouts for the work that we're all doing.
And I feel like we can use what we've learned in the Pacific Northwest and the Northeast to help those contractors install those heat pumps properly. Because at the end of the day, a well-installed heat pump is what's going to provide those savings that we're looking for and that the utilities are looking for. Without great installation practices, a heat pump is only as good as the contractor who installs it.
Got it. And Lindsey, you mentioned utilities. I'm kind of curious for your take, or anybody else's, on what actually makes a great utility partner versus one that's just trying to hit some numbers. Like, what are the really great programs out there? What are they doing really well that makes them stand out?
My favorite programs are ones that hold contractors accountable for good installation practices. As manufacturers, we all have sort of our top tier dealers that have gone through training. However, allowing people, what I like to say, and this is a bit of a hot take, is a chuck in a truck, that guy who's just throwing heat pumps in sometimes does more damage to a program than all the great contractors that are out there that are able to provide the savings to homeowners and then also to the grid while installing those heat pumps properly. It's just holding contractors accountable, but then also being really open to feedback from our contractor network and working with them to make sure that these are programs that support the contractor's business. It's hard out there right now. So making sure that there's quick turnaround times on payment, also that they are making their constituents or their ratepayers aware of some of those programs.
Well, I was going to say that one of my favorite things that a utility can do in addition to what Lindsey said, because like garbage in, garbage out is so true. And if a utility isn't developing those standards and basically rewarding the best installers that perform for their program, then they can expect to have mediocrity in the result. How does a utility reward their best contractors? They do lead generation in a meaningful way and then manage the results of that lead. There are very few programs around the US that take this quality approach that's comprehensive, right? It has the standards, but then rewards performance. The ones that do have incredibly high outcomes, both in the number of units installed, but then the performance of those units fulfill what is expected from them.
This is like a pay for performance model. So there might be a rebate for the homeowner, but also a very specific rebate for the contractor as well. Is that what you mean? Or is there?
No, it's actually much more simplistic than that. Most state regulators will say that we don't want energy efficiency set aside money that's collected from the ratepayer and then used for programs like the incentives programs. They don't want that money to be used in marketing. And there's a lot of rules that prevent utilities from doing that. Doesn't mean utilities can't do it. They just have to use different monies. Okay, well, where would they get those monies and why would they use them? Well, there are monies that they have for corporate marketing and other, these are for-profit businesses, utilities. So they have a built-in incentive to do things that are ultimately produce more profit for their business. Energy efficiency is profitable when it's done right. And so they can invest their corporate marketing dollars or other resources, do lead generation, and then deliver those leads to these contractors. LG and Carrier and Daikin participate in just such a program in the Northwest with Portland General Electric. And it is a standout program in this way. And the contractors who don't follow up on the leads, sell the customer a furnace instead of a heat pump, they don't get leads. They don't get to be in the group anymore. Similarly, if they don't respond to customers who are confused and don't know how to use their heat pump, and then they don't get those leads anymore. And then finally, if there's basically poor performance from that heat pump, which becomes apparent, like in terms of high rates, high energy use from that home, it becomes an issue. The utility invests in staff to manage their heat pump program. It's a pretty big investment, but they're experts in it. They are shamefully too unique in the landscape of this country, these kinds of programs.
I want to just add one thing that I think makes a good program, and that is when the utilities come to us, the manufacturers, for feedback before they design the program. That's probably my one biggest statement, because all those things that were just can be summarized and accomplished by getting our feedback and our voice of what works. And too often they design a program in a cocoon, they roll it out, and then you call the program manager and you go, how are we supposed to handle this type of application or installation? Because your program is really a box and this is a circle that we are in. And I think having to fix things after a program's been rolled out is way more difficult. And, I think just building that trust with the utility partners or the implementers to say, hey, we've got your back. We really do want this to be a successful program. here's some characteristics of what that looks like, or avoid these types of things.
This is such an interesting conversation. So we've gotten to be pretty friendly with the guys at Pearl Edison. I don't know if you've seen them. They're doing heat pump installations and sort of white labeling for utilities and interface for homeowners to go to get weatherization, air sealing, and heat pumps. And they're doing awesome stuff in Michigan and Pennsylvania. I bring them up because they wrote an article on what they learned from the Michigan Detroit area program. They got a whole section, heat pump cowboys, right? A rebate comes into play and there's this sugar rush. And people run at it, and like people have learned that like you got to get the money while it's there because it can run out. And so you just have, one of you said, like slinging heat pumps, and you can have that, and you can get bad installations, and you can get heat pumps in homes where they're not ready for it. You can get the opposite of what homeowners are supposed to get. Like if you do it right, you can get more comfort, you can get lower bills, and if you do it wrong, you get the opposite. And so I've heard some interesting things. This is like when I look on LinkedIn and see people arguing about rebates, this is the one big thing against rebates, right? That like perverse incentives, people game the system, yada, yada, yada. So you guys I've heard some interesting things, but I just want to like nail them down a little bit. If you were like, what have specific programs done to avoid those perverse incentives, to avoid that behavior? Yeah, Jonathan's dying to jump in.
Nothing is the answer.
Okay.
Because I would say that you want to utility programs, incentive programs are by nature economic tools. And when you throw something to create economic activity, don't be surprised when you get a flood of response to that economic activity. And so, I mean, I just think one might come with the other. And utilities that come from nowhere and try to run a heat pump program, the flash, the hot turn on, and they do it with big incentive dollars to try to get a big response. They don't have the experience to manage quality, the other elements of the program that work. But the contractors that would respond to something like that also don't have the experience. So I guess I am sounding cynical. I'm not a cynic. But I think
I'd like to disagree with that. just kidding.
You're disagreeing
Yeah.
with Jonathan. He's not
disagree too well.
I kid.
I think there's a certain amount of economic reality, and the rules that a program might put into place.
Yeah.
They're such blunt, brutal tools in many cases. Like quality installation is this long-standing practice that utilities have tried to do, which doesn't always produce quality results anyway. There's too many. If somebody really wants to cheat, they can fill out that quality installation checklist and turn it into their utility and fake the whole thing. So, I mean, I think that programs need to recognize that we're talking about changing fundamentally the rules of the game, how practices are done. It doesn't happen fast. It simply is human. It takes human knowledge to raise up the quality and the skill. And so I think programs honestly, they expect that those first years of cranking up the incentive amounts, that they're going to have some problems, and they should just be prepared for that as a ongoing continuous improvement process, and just take some of the bad with the good at the beginning.
No, I was going to build upon this causing problem thing. So I think part of the bad that can happen, it's not just the dollars, it's the design of the program and the metrics that the program is. So if you want rapid heat pump adoption, you can just go slightly over federal minimum standard and say, we're going to incentivize up, with big dollars, any kind of heat pump. And now you end up with the problem that the Southeast is experiencing, because the cheapest heat pump that will go to electric resistance, which will be a single speed or maybe a 2-speed with electric backup, is going to be what is installed and incentivized. And what that's going to create is a downstream 20-year life cycle impact that every time that utility is at its peak, And when does peak occur? Typically on the coldest morning hours of the year. People are starting their showers. They got the electric resistance water heater going. They got the heat pump that is really just nothing but an electric resistance furnace at that point. That policy or that decision, maybe let's not say policy, that decision by that program to just allow anything just to get the numbers Eric was talking about before, right? To get volume of heat pump install is going to have a negative effect downstream. And then we're going to come back and go, heat pumps don't work. And inverter compressor systems, whether they're a cold climate or not, are going to do much better down to lower temperatures and ride right through most of those events without any electric resistance. Now you put a cold climate system on, we can serve way more of the United States, for majority of the bin hours. That's kind of my comment.
Kevin, this touched a nerve with me because that is my biggest rub with the industry when people say heat pumps don't work, they don't keep up. You're not installing the right heat pump for the right situation, because heat pumps are an incredible technology. I will fight anyone on this. It is my absolute favorite thing to talk about. So install the right heat pump for the right conditions. And Kevin's exactly right. We shouldn't be having these electric furnaces turning on at 9 a.m. So don't tell me that heat pumps don't keep up. Heat pumps don't provide savings. The wrong heat pumps don't provide savings. The wrong heat pumps.
There's two other solutions too. Thank you guys for getting me back. I started off cynical, but I'm going to return to really the truly optimistic answer. It's we need to educate homeowners as well to use their heat pumps in a way that is going to have them shine the best. So not doing deep nighttime setbacks like we were trained to do with our furnaces, but to keep them at a more constant temperature. And that's really utilities. That's their job, to educate their homeowners on how to use their heat pump to save electricity. But you asked us that question, the flash in the pan when a utility turns on an incentive. All of our companies are working on something that can really help be the way forward for new or hot incentives. And it's a digital quality installation check. It's something that a few manufacturers have products in the market, and everyone's working on this. We're hoping that utility and government programs will require or even additionally incentivize this type of product. But imagine these digital modern heat pumps, right? They're computer controlled. They're full of sensors. That's how they do all those great things that Lindsey was talking about. Well, why don't we use those sensors and a little bit of software to have the heat pump upon startup check itself out for those things that reduce its efficiency, and then report their checkup, their startup checklist to a third party. It's a huge lift, but it's totally possible. For instance, today Daikin has this. It's got a new name. I have to remember. It's called Skyport Home and Skyport Care. It's basically a series of diagnostic checks that upon startup, we today don't report that to utilities, but we're working out how to open those data channels to be able to do that. But we're doing it as an industry. So on these calls, I'm working with an engineer from Lindsey's company, Carrier. There's a person participating from LG, and myself and Train are we have the product now out in the market. And so we're working as an industry to kind of create this new opportunity that I think will help those new entrants to heat pumps, the guys who do respond to this huge incentive, but they don't have a lot of experience working with programs. I think we want, ultimately, if we're going to be able to do these millions upon millions of heat pumps, we need to activate all of these people. And I'm hopeful that this digital solution that can only happen with modern variable speed type heat pumps will be the cure to the problem, let's say, to speak.
I have a question about that, Jonathan. So this technology, I know it's something that all of our companies are working on. My first gut reaction, is this another technology or system that a contractor is going to have to learn? Or is this something that happens on the back end naturally from the equipment itself, something that us as manufacturers or maybe even the distributor owns, just because the contractor has so much on there? Yeah, but or
really
maybe it's in lieu of submitting all this paperwork for a rebate, incentive, whatever.
It should be easier for the contract to do than the alternative, which is a paperwork process and maybe even a third-party rater to come in and check the equipment. We've tried all of those things in the residential replacement business in the past. In the Northwest, we had Check Me. It was a third-party test out of heat pumps, and they closed the program after like 15 years just this last year because it just was too expensive and ineffective. Well, it was effective, it was too expensive and too much learning involved. So this digital process, of course, somebody's going to have an app. They're going to have to be enrolled and all of those other things. But as an industry, we're trying to standardize what is included in the diagnostic and what are the tolerances for the check itself so that it means something across all of our very different products in the market. So I'm hopeful. I think that it's going to be easier for contractors, lower cost for everyone involved. It's not going to, there's one challenge that we have, and let me just quickly summarize it. We can do this kind of automated process within our computer systems that run the modern heat pump, or we can do it with smart refrigerant tools like the gauges and sensors that we might put on a heat pump and then have these smart tools send a final report. I think we've concluded that we have to keep open the possibility of smart tools for contractors to use. But Lindsey, you hit the nail right on the head. It's going to be very training intensive. It's not going to be for these enormous number of new technicians that are going to be needed to meet the electrification goals, the energy efficiency and grid protection goals that are really coming on fast. So I'm much more excited and positive about the automated approach, though I recognize there's probably a place for these smart tools too. I think, like most things, the technology solution will win.
It makes a ton of sense to have this sort of, I think of it, it sounds like almost automated commissioning of the equipment. And, we have, in this day and age, we interact with all kinds of other products that are doing this. I think about automatic standby generators. They have every month they kick on, they go through a whole diagnostic cycle to make sure the whole system is working properly. They're set up to remote monitoring systems so that if it cycles through and double checks that everything's good, if there is a problem, it can actually flag it for a technician. These systems have been around in cars and generators. It just makes a ton of sense to have it in your HVAC system as well. And, ultimately, man, there's all kinds of great information that helps all stakeholders. So it's great for the contractor because they'll be able to more quickly see that this system is up and running and things are, on target for the different metrics that they need to be hit. It's great for the utility to know that the system was actually installed correctly and commissioned correctly. The manufacturer, in theory, could get some of this information so they have more data about how their products are performing in the field when they've been commissioned. Maybe there's a check a year later. Are things still looking good? And that provides a really important feedback loop for the folks that are designing these products and figuring out how to make them better. And I think we hear this all the time where there's just this, very often, a homeowner, if they have a problem, they're upset at the contractor that installed the equipment, or they're looking at the brand on their unit and they're all pissed off at that brand. And man, it would be great if manufacturers have a better sense of what is going on with our equipment in the field. And so that you can better manage, your relationship with the end homeowner and have better outcomes and fewer homeowners saying, oh, my heat pump from this brand is crap. And now I'm all pissed off. I'm going to tell other people that it's crappy. We can stop that kind of stuff before it's ever even an issue.
Well, and at the end of the day, I know actually for all of our companies here, we want the contractor to shine. We want the homeowners to love the contractor. I don't necessarily care if someone is in love with their Carrier heat pump, of course. Personally, I love that. But at the end of the day, I want them to love their contractor because that's who really owns the relationship with the homeowner. So however we can best support our contractor in supporting their homeowner and giving them the tools to maybe see an alert before even the homeowner does. Imagine that, and being able to call their homeowner saying, hey, I noticed you might have a filter that needs to be changed, or something seems off. We're going to send a technician out just to take a look.
I'm sensing a lot of love around this technology solution. So if it's okay, I'm going to make a plug for people who are listening, who work for utilities or contractors or industry people who interact with utilities. They're calling it connected commissioning as a kind of industry evolution. Daikin, we call our product something else. Train calls it something else, etc. But we're calling this thing connected commissioning. And let's chirp about it. Let's tell everybody we know, because I think it is the new direction and the solution to a lot of historic problems we've had with heat pumps and utility programs. Or at least part of the solution.
I know, Daikin, you guys have some really interesting feedback, built in that is just very impressive. And, at LG, we have this tool called LG MV, and it is a very inexpensive, like $150 for this dongle, and it Bluetooth to the phone. I mean, every piece of data you could possibly need, which these programs need. But when that tool was designed, it was really intended for that contractor to as rapidly as possible see everything right on their phone, all kind of diagnostic feedback. What's the pressures? What's the temp coming off of that indoor unit? The refrigerant charge, just everything right at their fingertips. And it's Bluetooth, right? It's easy, and that's the technology. But I don't think I'm hoping that those products evolve over time, that become an easier, way to get that data from, instead of just plugging in the dongle, to the outdoor unit to get this, that it somehow is captured to Eric's point. Because I think if we knew what was happening of everything in the field, we would start to see, we're going to learn about different models and what they do and don't do. And then maybe we can bridge that data feed to programs. But, every manufacturer is going to do that a little different. What I will say is kind of cool, to your point about feedback, is what I really like about LG Solutions is we have everything on one app, which is this ThinQ app. And in LG, homeowners don't think about HVAC when they think about LG. They think about the washer, dryer, the TV, the refrigerator, whatever. But it's all works under one ecosystem, this ThinQ. And with AI technology, it's companies like LG that are starting to think, you know what, if something's wrong with that HVAC, it's going to pop up a notice on the TV when they're watching a show that says, hey, by the way, that heat pump, we're starting to notice a fault. You might want, and so when you have that ecosystem of all these solutions, and with AI power, you're like wondering, man, what could we do? It's pretty cool to think about what the future could hold.
Yeah, we're terrified at Daikin. We are terrified that Samsung and LG and all these brands that make everything in our lives are going to they have just capabilities that we don't have. So thanks for crushing my enthusiasm, Kevin, with your awesome products.
Since we're talking data to three manufacturers, and Jonathan, you made kind of a plug to the audience to kind of chirp about stuff. Let me make one that's a big issue for us since we got you three here. Can we just make equipment performance data easier to access? The fact that there's no latent capacity in any, it's like driving, because look, you got to do them to do a good heat pump install. You got to know what the home needs. If the home is super loose, don't put a heat pump in it, right? You should do weatherization, air sealing first, but get a good load and then put the right darn heat pump in there. But to do that, you need really good performance data. So Kevin, to hear you say there's going to be this app that gives you all amazing, but can I just get the data beforehand that's buried in equipment specs and behind 6 paywalls? I think that would go a long way right now. Stony silence.
No,
I hear your plug.
I think everywhere we work in our collective utility thing, everyone's recognizing that you have to have a load calculation. Then if the heat pump connects to ductwork, some adequacy of ductwork. And we as manufacturers really do make it too hard to get to the engineering performance data of our products. We have it digitally on the web, but we don't talk about it as much as we should, and we don't educate it as much as we should. And recently we've, as an industry, connected with AHRI as our industry association, and we're getting more of this necessary data to be available through these very available common sources. But there's room for improvement. But not to go backwards in conversation, there may be a day when right-sizing a heat pump is a lot easier to do. Obviously, technologies like Amply break down the barriers to doing that load calculation in the first place. We need to get our performance data to be embedded in tools. And I think that the way we're connecting our corporate data through AHRI, I see a path forward for us now to then make the performance data for a certified indoor and outdoor pair, a combination, then available for your APIs to access. I am also hopeful that this connected commissioning type of digital product will be able to confirm after the fact that this heat pump is within a right sizing. It might take a season of operation for us to build the performance curve against the.
Yep.
Yeah.
To see.
But I think we're going to get there. That's what we're all talking about it and thinking about it in these
Jonathan,
groups.
Your answer gives me hope, because when Ed at first asked that question, all I could think is, yeah, wouldn't that be nice? It would be lovely to be able to access that information in an easy, concise manner. And I think Jonathan's exactly right. I think we have an opportunity, and I think that time is very close. So
can you say any more about, we've heard various bits and pieces, like you might at least have sensible heat factor along with AHRI certificate. Are you going to have like minimum latent capacity available maybe? So we can just put it right into Manual S. Any more details?
Given we're taping December 19th, Eric's wondering whether this will be a Christmas miracle for December 2026.
hope you wrote it on your Christmas list. Hope you've been good this year.
I think we're a little farther apart, not to monopolize the conversation, but I think as I see the roadmap to getting to where you want to be, something like this. First of all, we have to get all parties, all stakeholders agreeing that universally load calcs are a foundation to what we're doing. Next, we have to get Manual S, the contractor industry accepted process for structure and evaluating all the requirements of the structure, and then actually selecting equipment. Once we have all these things, we could say, okay, well, what are the data that needs to be essentially a part of Manual S? And then how can we communicate that? And then I mean, we know all of the information that you're asking about our equipment. It just has to fit within this complete soup to nuts logical structure. And we're just not there. And I'll give you just one little thing. Our industry has been asked to do so much for the public purpose in the last decade. And still do our core job, which is to make and continually improve and market and sell products. We're exhausted.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt the contractors have gone through extreme whiplash with, refrigerant changes, refrigerant mitigation strategies now. And then, like you said, Inflation Reduction Act on, now that program turned off, tax credits on, tax credits off, and just trying to keep on top of this. But I want to come back to what Jonathan said before. And I think there's some baby steps that we need to be taking. And Amply's product is a major solution to solving, I think, that first step, which is already a known problem, and that's sizing, right? And I think it's just, Amply product helps that process happen faster and quicker, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. And to me, it's tools like that, I think, make the process of sizing something more like, okay, I'm willing to do that. I've got to make a little investment in my business, but you know what? I'm going to end up with a better product. And I think we need to educate them on, you should have always been sizing. Like, you know what? The pain was too difficult for them to do it before. And with tools like Amply, that breaks down that barrier. But then that's step one. Then it's the manual, like Jonathan talked about. So, and and I know you want the latent kind of information and all this great database that sucks the data right in, but you can see how far we are from just even some of the fundamentals. And yet these utility programs, these efficiency programs are running out way faster down this pathway. Like, okay, now let's do connected commissioning. Let's do all this. Like, we haven't even gotten sizing to become standardized. Like, I'm wondering if we're just trying to run after every little, let's tweak this just a little bit more. Let's squeeze a little bit more out of this. And I'm like, your biggest squeeze is probably the getting it right at first.
Yeah.
Picking the right piece of equipment.
Which
you are exactly right. Yep.
I think that's a great, we could talk to you guys all day. By the way, this was as fun to watch you three interact here on the pod as it was sort of planning for this. So I can tell you all are industry friends, and I love that. I appreciate the openness, the honesty, the transparency. I want to ask a final question, which is this. Given where you all sit, interacting with utilities and governments and your companies who are working with contractors, if you could each wave a magic wand to accelerate the adoption of putting heat pumps in homes and making sure it's the right damn heat pump for that home, what would you do? Lindsey, do you want to go? Because Jonathan and Kevin spoke most recently. You want to go first?
Yeah. If I had a magic wand, man, I'd want to change a lot. I think the first thing would be
leak some for Kevin and Jonathan. You can just take one really good one.
Okay. I honestly wish that more contractors would use a program like Amply, or just make sure that they are doing sizing of heat pumps so that they are getting the right heat pump for the home. That would be my big thing, is making sure that they are selecting the right heat pump, making sure that it's sized properly and the installation practices were there. That would probably be my big magic wand.
Good. Lindsey got the only right answer. So Jonathan and Kevin, you don't need to go. More people should use it. No, okay. Thank you, Lindsey. That was a great answer.
Yep.
I hate this question. I honestly do, because you can't just say one thing. Like, there is no silver bullet. And that is the problem with the question in and of itself. There's so many things that have to come together. And to kind of reiterate on my point before, these contractors have been going through whiplash. And I mean, we're already, probably strained on the capacity that the contractor network has to accomplish this. But if I'm, I was hoping you wouldn't pick me to go first, because I wanted to think of what other people would say, and maybe I shouldn't have jumped in. I should have waited for Jonathan. But I think
Kevin, your answer is the one thing is get a different moderator for the Heat Pump podcast, because I asked bad questions.
Yeah,
that's also a good answer.
So, okay, so I just thought about this because I think it gets back to my baby step question. No more ACs.
Yes.
No more ACs. Why do we need two-way ACs? One-way ACs should no longer be manufactured or sold. And then we'll work on the things like, then we get adoption, right? People go, I can get the same outcome from a heat pump as that AC, and we will work on the programs to make sure it's the right two-way AC or heat pump, right, for the program, so that the program is not only driving for energy efficiency, but we are helping to protect the utility from itself of going into a death spiral by incentivizing the wrong heat pump, the wrong type of heat pump. So
yeah, if I hadn't had to go
I do a
first,
mic
that would have
drop?
been my Yeah, that
honestly,
was the best answer. I'm sorry, that wins.
I
in my
didn't
opinion.
think there
Jonathan,
could be a better answer than Lindsey's, but that was but that puts a lot of pressure on Jonathan now. Good answer.
The only thing I can come up with is so like wonky. It's a little embarrassing. Lindsey and Kevin gave awesome wishes. I have those too. Just to put a little additional thing is I wish that programs would talk to each other, because they often go to market and then come up with some metric or requirement that's different from their neighboring utility. And the contractors, of course, work across multiple utilities in most states. So I think we've made it really hard for the market to work. And utilities, Kevin and I worked together for years, so we've been talking about this forever, but we need to get these utilities in the same room, talking about it. Now that Lindsey's joined us in the fray, we're all saying this, and we need to beat this drum as much as we can. Statewide programs like Wisconsin has Focus on Energy, Oregon has the Energy Trust, Mass Saves. These are really helpful. I think we need them in most states. And then we need those state programs to come to industry like ours and say, we need this like level of energy efficiency as a baseline for our programs. And then we can react. Then economies of scale work. I hope we're putting behind us the days when a utility in California would come to us as a global manufacturer of heat pumps and say, we need this particular product. And then utility in New York has a completely different need. And meanwhile, there's 50 other states leading utilities to respond to. Our engineers are just like, no, I don't want to play in that world. And now we're ready to move beyond to this more reality checked kind of paradigm of operating. And we just got to keep beating that drum. We're almost there. But if I could wish it into place, that's my wish.
That wasn't wonky at all. That was a great wish. All right.
Beautiful.
You know what? I would be stuck on a desert island with these guys in a genie lamp. That'd be okay.
Yeah.
I would do
mean,
that.
I love it. Share the learnings. That's what you're saying, Jonathan. Like, it's so great that we have all these different state laboratories and utility laboratories across the country, but holy cow, we got to share the learnings so we don't have to reinvent the same wheel 20 different times.
Good. And I think that like we all need to remember that we have huge goals to achieve. Like if you're a climate denier, good for you. I believe that nothing less than humanity's existential future is at stake here with climate change. And not to mention, I really like where the world is today. I really like the way that technology and open communication channels can help solve humanity's lingering crises. And energy is at the center of everything. And we have incredible demands on our energy resources. So let's get this. Let's pull on the same end of the rope. Let's get this right for the sake of our climate and our economies, which so need energy to move to the next phase. So let's get good enough. Let's pull together. Good enough is what we need.
That's an excellent place to end. And those were 3 excellent answers to one very bad question. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the Heat Pump Podcast. This was a ton of fun. We learned a ton.
Oh, thank you so much
For having us.
Great. This was excellent.
Yeah.
I could chat with these guys all day long.
Really fun.
I love hanging out with Lindsey and Kevin, and now my friends at Amply. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Yeah, you guys are in the fold now, so don't be strangers.
We're glad to be. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks for listening to the Heat Pump Podcast. It is a production of Amply Energy. And just a reminder that the opinions voiced were those of our guests or us, depending on who was talking. If you like what you've heard and haven't subscribed, please subscribe in your favorite podcast platform. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out. You can reach us once again at hello@amply.energy. No.com, just .energy. Thanks a lot.